I'm Sean Shaw. I'm the state representative from District 61 in Tampa. So I'm honored to represent Seminole Heights, Ybor City, East Tampa, a little bit of West Tampa, and Progress Village. So it's a very diverse district. I represent the urban core of Tampa, but if you know Tampa, you know Ybor City is a really big destination. And right now, unfortunately, we have a serial killer on the loose in Seminole Heights, and I actually live in Seminole Heights. So it's a little unnerving, but we'll catch the person who's doing it. We know it's a him now, so we'll catch him. And the police are doing everything they can, and it's scary times, but we'll get through it. So I actually was raised in Tallahassee. So I went to public school here in Tallahassee, graduated from Leon High School, and then I went to Princeton University for college and the University of Florida for law school, and I graduated in 2003, and I moved back to Tallahassee. And eventually I got appointed by Alex Sink to be the insurance consumer advocate of the state of Florida, which means I was responsible for protecting insurance consumers, travel around the state, and appear before the legislature to protect their interests legislatively here. And so we did that, and I did that under Alex Sink. And when she announced her run for governor, I resigned that job to work on her governor's race, and it was based in Tampa. And so I stayed in Tampa after her governor's race and started working at a law firm there. And I'm a plaintiff's lawyer that protects insurance consumers from insurance companies. So I represent policyholders against their insurance companies. So it was a natural progression from what I did. And I got involved in my community, and I ran for the legislature there in Tampa, and here we are. I am on, as it shouldn't be surprised, a whole bunch of insurance-related committees. So I'm thankful that I was able to get every committee I asked for: commerce, banking and insurance, civil justice, utilities, and the government operations appropriations committee. And I really like that committee because it's responsible kind of for the state budget. And when I was at DFS, I was kind of familiar with the budget and how we did it. And I was responsible for the consumer advocates part of the budget. So I was a little familiar with how the state budgets got presented to the legislature. But clearly, my insurance expertise is something I get to use up here, and I really like it. It's something, you know, some people's eyes glaze over when you start talking about insurance. I'm one of the ones that perks up and really like to dive deep into these things to make sure we do stuff that is fair and balanced. Because up here, you know, we're very sensitive to the interest of business and the interest of the people paying premiums, which we should be, but we've got to extend that same sensitivity to the people who may be making claims, the people who are affected, the people, the little guy and the little gal, as Mike Fasano would say. We've got to be sensitive to them too, and I like to think that I'm up here to try to bring some of that balance. Education. Education, education, education. Public education. And so I voted against the budget last session, more so I didn't think it was transparent. The process was transparent enough. And there were things in the budget that I just didn't agree with. You know, the lack of funding for the judiciary, for example. Shouldn't be surprised I'm focused on that. There were some public education dollars versus charter school dollars. So I voted against the budget for a myriad of reasons. I suspect that I may be telegraphing, but I suspect I may be in the same place unless we change our priorities midstream, which I don't see happening. So we really need to look. The majesty of Florida is her environment. That is why people come here. And we aren't protecting her. We aren't doing a good enough job of preserving her for the future. And we're going to look back at these times 20, 30 years from now and wonder why we didn't protect our springs, why we didn't do something about Lake Okeechobee, why we didn't do something about our eroding beaches. People come to Florida. This is the reason we grow as a state. It's the reason we have a robust economy. It's based on tourism. It's based on people coming here. We better protect her better than we're doing. So my dad was, Leander J. Shaw Jr., the first African-American Chief Justice of the Florida Supreme Court, but I just knew him as Dad, right? So I didn't know it was a big deal when I was a little kid, and I grew up in the Supreme Court building. You know, I'd go to work with him, or after school, I'd go to the Supreme Court and hang out. I didn't know any better. It's just Dad. And of course, the older I got, particularly when I got to law school, I realized, okay, this is a big deal. But it certainly, public service was something that I got to see up close and personal every day of my life growing up. And I saw it was noble, it was honorable, and it was something that you should aspire to do. It wasn't kind of something you end up doing. It's something that could be a goal and a number one desire. And I always had it in my heart to do that. Now, I didn't want to be a judge, though, because people always ask me, why didn't you go into the judiciary? because they have to follow the law. I wanted to make it. And that's what I'm trying to do here in the legislature. I did not want to be constrained by what the legislature was telling me I had to do. That's what I'd have to do as a judge. I wanted to have a hands-on experience making the law. But clearly the influence of my dad, it's why I'm a lawyer. It's why I'm in public service. It's kind of, he was, kind of a shining example of an honorable public servant, and it's something that stuck with me. And it's something, I went to schools where people always want to be investment bankers, or they want to be, hot shot whatever, and I thought I wanted to be a hot shot public servant somehow, and that's kind of how it ended up. I filed a bill to prevent the sweeping of the Sadowski Fund, and the Sadowski Fund is the trust fund that's set up for affordable housing. And in this state, we sweep that trust fund to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars every year to balance the budget. And yet we like to declare how fiscally prudent Florida is and how well run she is financially. Well, I would tell you that I don't think that's correct. I don't think balancing the budget on the back of trust funds, particularly one for affordable housing, is financially prudent. And I don't think you can claim to be fiscally good by balancing the budget in that manner. You need to do it in other ways. Now, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is one that is a particularly egregious example when we talk about sweeping. It was set up for affordable housing. We now have an affordable housing crisis in this state, but it is self-inflicted. It's because we sweep the fund hundreds of millions of dollars. And now, we set up the trust fund, a crisis happens because we sweep it, and now we're sitting over here, well, there's not enough affordable housing. There would be if we used the trust fund for what it was intended to be used for. And so I just think as a base principle, you cannot balance your general budget on using trust funds. It's not morally right. It's not legally right, probably, and it's just not something we ought to be doing. Why are we setting up trust funds if we're going to sweep them when the next legislature comes that didn't set up the trust fund? It's just, I don't understand it, and I certainly hope to stop it, and that's my favorite bill. We filed some criminal justice bills to reform how juveniles are treated when they are charged with crimes. I've got a couple insurance-related bills as well. Another bill that is one that is very dear to me. A couple reached out to a news station. The news station then reached out to me. What had happened was they had rented a home that's on a sinkhole, but there's no law that requires the landlord to inform them that the home they're renting is above a sinkhole, whether it's been repaired, whether a sinkhole exists, what was done to correct it. None of that's required. So you can sign a lease. You and a young family can move into a home that you're renting and have no idea that underneath it is a sinkhole. And you don't know whether it's been repaired. You don't know anything. And so this family, understandably, after the hurricane, discovered cracks and sinking, and come to find out there was a sinkhole. After much investigation, found out there was a sinkhole under their home, but there was nothing that could be done. They couldn't even get out the lease. And so the news station contacted me, and I was appalled, and I filed a bill to require that disclosure. And that's kind of one of the cool things about Tallahassee. When I told you I wanted to make the laws, that's one of the things. You hear something bad, you file a law to try to fix it. And that's a really feel-good law that I was able to do that. They came up to, they're from Hernando County. They came up to Tallahassee yesterday, drove up 4 hours just to see me, tell me their story, and just to thank me for filing that bill. And I told them they are the ones that deserve thanks, because they're gonna help a lot more people if we're able to pass this bill. So that's one that I really felt good about. The first thing that comes to mind is the nursing home problem. And so unfortunately in Tallahassee, this is where good ideas come to die. And so clearly 12 people dying in a nursing home because the nursing home lost power is a problem. Whether the problem is not enough regulation, whether the existing regulation isn't enforced, whether the owner-operator of this particular home is just a criminal bad actor that you can't legislate, I don't know. I know what I'm starting to think, but what I do know is why else are we in Tallahassee other than to act on issues like that? That's an unacceptable situation, and we've got to do something about that. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Another thing is, kind of the utilities prioritization of, restoring power. it's a process that everyone knows what to do, but it's not necessarily in statute anywhere. Everyone says that, you know, they work well with the EOCs in these counties, but we got testimony that some counties do it right, some counties do it better than others, some counties aren't very good at it, some counties don't get along with each other, don't get along with the utilities. So I think we might need to just put in statute how it should work. I don't want to tell the utilities what building they should restore when, but I do want it to be in statute that the utilities work with the county emergency operation centers to figure out in that particular county who ought to get restored and when. So those are the two things that come to mind. But, you know, we're hearing about debris removal. We're hearing about, you know, the waterways, and we're hearing about hardening other facilities and what we need to do. So we're hearing about a lot of things, but the two things that I was most focused on are the utilities and the nursing homes. This is the best job I've ever had in my life. It is a privilege and an honor to serve the constituents of not only District 61, but the state of Florida. And, you know, one of the things I found up here is good people are serving our state. And it has restored a lot of my confidence in government. Now, I'm not here to tell you that Tallahassee's perfect. I'm not here to tell you that the sausage isn't ugly when it's being made. But what I am here to tell you is that good people are up here trying to do the best thing for the people that elected them, for the most part. And that has restored my confidence in government more than I would have imagined when I got here. So I'm happy to be here, and I will continue to serve as long as they'll have me.